In the world of Harlem hustlers, few stories are more tragic or more twisted than the one where your best friend kills your brother and your other friend dies at the hands of the streets he once ruled. Today, we're breaking down Azie Faison's raw truth behind the Paid in Full saga. What really happened to Rich Porter, why Alpo turned killer, and how the game chewed up the very kids who once ran it. If your closest friend betrayed you for money, would you forgive them or make sure the world knows the truth? Drop your thoughts in the comments. This one's deep. What happens when a whole generation grows up surrounded by money, murder, and music? In the 1980s, Harlem was a beast with two faces. One side was style, soul, and rhythm. The other was blood-stained pavement and young black boys with bricks in their backpacks. This was the ecosystem Azie, Rich, and Alpo were born into, not just raised by it, but shaped by its rules. It wasn't about dreams. It was about survival. They didn't pick the game picked them. Their childhood playgrounds were hustler headquarters. Their role models weren't teachers or pastors, but drug lords in mink coats. That's how fast kids turned into businessmen or corpses. Environments don't just influence outcomes, they define them. Azie Faison was pulling in tens of thousands a day before he had a driver's license. By 15, he connected with a Dominican plug that changed his life and Harlem's drug economy. Within a year, Azie was distributing kilos across multiple boroughs, keeping operations tight and under the radar. He wasn't loud. He wasn't reckless. He was organized. The streets respected silence more than flexing. He wasn't flashy like Rich or reckless like Alpo. Azie was the architect, strategic, calculated, and constantly expanding. His quiet dominance built an empire where loyalty was currency and betrayal was death. You don't need noise to make power moves. Precision speaks louder. Picture a teenage boy in custom gear, cruising through Harlem in a BMW while the block cheers his name. That was Rich Porter. Charismatic, stylish, and loved by the streets, Rich had what money couldn't buy: the people's love. He treated his crew like family and gave back to the hood. Kids idolized him. Women adored him. The streets respected him. But when everyone loves you, envy's not far behind. To many, Rich wasn't just a hustler, he was hope. He made poverty look like luxury. But in the game, visibility is vulnerability. That attention made him a legend, but also a target. In the streets, fame is a liability dressed like success. Azie once called Alpo his little brother, a ride or die, a soldier. But loyalty in the drug game has an expiration date. Alpo came up hungry. He learned fast, earned trust, and ran with Azie and Rich like family. But ambition turned into something darker. By his early 20s, Alpo's name was ringing in DC, Virginia, and New York, not just for moving weight, but for dropping bodies. When ego meets paranoia, betrayal is only a matter of time. Azie says the signs were always there. The mood swings, the thirst for power, the switch from business to blood. Alpo crossed the line, then made his own rules. The most dangerous enemy is the one that knows your secrets. If these young hustlers had been born into Wall Street, they'd be CEOs today. Azie's operation mirrored a Fortune 500 company. Hierarchy, logistics, customer management, product flow. They had runners, stash locations, lookouts, and cleanup crews. At its peak, the crew was moving $100,000 plus a week, cash. But with every dollar came a risk. Every corner had eyes. It wasn't a gang, it was a business with death as overhead. They weren't reckless kids. They were young executives managing a billion-dollar market. The streets taught them operations, risk management, leadership, just without a retirement plan. Hustling teaches skills, but the cost of learning is often your life. Azie walked into a setup thinking he was about to make money. He left with 9 bullets in his body and a new view on life. In 1987, Azie was ambushed during a supposed business deal. 3 men, including someone he trusted, tied him up, shot him multiple times, and left him for dead. He survived barely, but everything changed. Lying in that hospital bed, Azie realized the game had no loyalty, no rules, only vultures. Pain teaches faster than profit. He lived, but the empire started to fall apart. When a boss bleeds, so does the organization. That moment turned Azie from kingpin to survivor. Every hustler has a moment where they either evolve or die. The streets knew Donnell was off limits, but someone broke the code. In 1989, Rich Porter's 12-year-old brother, Donnell, was kidnapped. The ransom was $500,000. Harlem froze. You didn't touch family, especially kids. The streets may be lawless, but back then, there were unwritten rules. Donnell's severed finger was delivered as a warning. That was the moment Harlem lost its soul. The whispers began. Was it a setup? Was someone close involved? It didn't matter. That one move broke whatever honor the drug world had left. It proved that nothing, and no one, was sacred anymore. How does a man kill his best friend, then calmly confess it on camera years later? Alpo admitted he murdered Rich over a money dispute. He claimed Rich was cutting him out of deals. But those who knew them say it was deeper. Envy, paranoia, maybe even fear that Rich's shine would eclipse his own. He shot Rich in the head, dumped the body in the Bronx, and kept moving like nothing happened. This wasn't business. It was betrayal at its purest. Years later, Alpo casually admitted it all in interviews. No remorse, just cold facts, and that's what makes it even darker. The lack of humanity behind the act. Trust in the streets is an illusion, and illusions get people killed. After Rich's murder, Harlem didn't riot, it went silent. People expected revenge, fire, war, but what they got was eerie stillness. The hood mourned, but the machine kept moving. AZ was done. Alpo vanished into witness protection, and the younger generation watched as the so-called kings fell like dominoes. The silence was louder than any gunshot. Murals went up. Stories spread, but the damage was already permanent. Rich's death didn't just end a life. It ended an era. Harlem had changed. The code was dead. The old school was gone. When legends die, the culture shifts, sometimes forever. You can escape prison. You can even escape death for a while, but you can never outrun your past. After snitching on several associates, Alpo entered witness protection and lived under a new identity for years. But in 2021, he returned to Harlem, riding motorcycles, flexing like nothing ever happened. That didn't last long. He was shot and killed on Halloween. Some said it was karma. Others said it was justice. The streets always collect their debt, eventually. Coming back to Harlem was more than risky. It was suicidal. He was a walking symbol of betrayal. And in the end, Harlem answered, when you betray the code, the clock starts ticking, and it never stops. Imagine walking away from millions, but haunted by blood on your hands and the ghosts of those you couldn't save. After surviving the shooting and witnessing the betrayal of everything he built, AZ left the streets, not in cuffs, not in a casket, but in silence. His exit wasn't a celebration. It was a quiet retreat from a world that had taken more than it gave. He stepped out rich, but broken. He could have doubled down, rebuilt, or retaliated. Instead, he chose peace. That decision saved his life, and may have saved others too. He didn't just escape the game, he outlived it. Sometimes, survival isn't about winning. It's about walking away before you lose everything. The movie made millions cry, but it didn't tell the whole truth. Paid in Full became a cultural classic. It introduced a new generation to the tragic trio of Harlem's underworld. But like most Hollywood stories, it simplified the pain, glamorized the hustle, and muted the trauma. AZ was involved in the film's production, yet even he admitted it left out harsh realities. The movie sold the myth, not the scars. Alpo's ruthlessness, the agony of Donnell's murder, the paranoia after the betrayal. None of that hit as hard as it did in real life. The story was real, but the rawness? Sanitized. Don't confuse a script with the truth. Reality doesn't cut to credits. Why would a man who escaped death, prison, and scandal put himself back in the spotlight? Because silence protects cycles. As he started speaking publicly not to glorify the game, but to bury it. Through interviews, books, and public talks, he peeled back the fantasy. He didn't sugarcoat the deaths. He didn't romanticize the streets. He spoke so young boys would stop listening to lies. I didn't want to be remembered as a kingpin. He once said, I wanted to be remembered as someone who tried to fix what I helped break. That's why he keeps talking. The real ones don't talk for fame. They talk to stop funerals. Back then, the streets had rules. Today, it's just chaos with Wi-Fi. In AZ's era, There were certain lines you didn't cross. No snitching, no kids, no setting up your own people. That code was the thin thread of honor in a dirty world. But now, it's a free-for-all. Betrayal is content, disloyalty is strategy. The code didn't evolve, it disintegrated. Social media made the streets a stage. Clout became currency, and the honor that once governed the underworld, gone. AZ warns the young, LOL ain't playing the same game. You're playing with fire and smiling for likes. A broken code creates broken men and broken lives. AZ says he often wonders what could have been, not in regret, but in reflection. What if they'd had scholarships instead of street corners? Guidance counselors instead of cocaine connects? He says the tragedy isn't just what they became, it's what they never had the chance to become. Rich could have been a mogul. Alpo could have been a strategist. AZ, a business professor. The talent was there. The options weren't. They weren't villains. They were kids born into scarcity, chasing freedom through destruction. And that's the real crime. The pipeline from poverty to prison never needed to exist. Some kids don't need saving. They just need another route. The same man who once fed Harlem's drug scene now feeds the minds of its youth. AZ could have stayed silent, counted his money, and disappeared. Instead, he chose to show up. Today, he speaks in schools, juvenile facilities, and prisons, telling young men the raw truth, not the glamorized versions they see online. He shares the weight of his regrets and the cost of fast money. From dope dealer to hope dealer. He doesn't preach, he relates. I did what y'all think is cool, and it nearly killed me, he tells them. His presence commands respect because he's not guessing, he lived it. You can still find murals of Rich Porter in Harlem, fresh paint, clean lines, but missing truth in the details. To many, Rich is the symbol of style, hustle, and Harlem royalty. But behind the legend was a teenager trying to take care of his family in a broken system. His charm made him a star. His loyalty made him a target. His murder made him a martyr. He died too young and lived too fast. AZ remembers Rich not just for the flash, but for the heart. He wanted out. He wanted more. He just didn't get the chance. That's the part people forget. But their stories should warn, not just shine. Would you give back every dollar you made just to have peace? Azie Faison says yes, without hesitation. The money, the fame, the power, none of it compares to the pain, the funerals, or the nightmares. He didn't just lose friends, he lost pieces of himself. And now, in every interview, he tries to pass on the lesson the streets refuse to teach. The game gave him everything, then took everything else. He says he speaks for every rich that didn't make it, every Alpo that crossed the line, and every young boy still chasing the same illusions. You don't have to be me to learn from me. The story of Azie Faison, Rich Porter, and Alpo Martinez is more than just a tale of Harlem's underworld. It's a reflection of what happens when brilliance is boxed in by poverty and brotherhood is broken by betrayal. It's a warning, a mirror, a second chance for the next generation to make a different choice. If you're still here, you're not just watching, you're listening. And that's the first step toward understanding the streets beyond the headlines. Hit that like button if this story hit you different. Subscribe if you want more untold truths from the underworld to the aftermath. And let us know in the comments, which part of Azie's story moved you the most? Because remembering isn't enough. It's what we do with the memory that matters.